remember when the left went after people like, I don't know, Michael Flynn for the never-before-prosecuted Logan Act because they took a phone call on the transition team with a government that they were about to have to deal with for the next 4 years? Yeah, well, rules for thee, but not for me. For more on this, let's welcome in Senior Counsel for Litigation and Public Policy at the ACLJ, Ben Sisney. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Good morning. Thank you.
All right. So, Ben, the ACLJ obtained a new memo in State Department lawsuit unveiling unreported Obama-era officials' secret meeting with Iran during the Trump administration's tenure. This is huge.
Yeah, it is. And people need to understand that even though this goes back a few years, back to 2018, people need to understand the context that this happened in. Go back to May of 2018 when the story came out. I think it was the Boston Globe that broke it, that Kerry was meeting with Iran, Foreign Minister Zarif and probably others in an effort to try to salvage the Iran deal, the JCPOA that the Trump administration was working to get us out of. And just days later, still in that first or second week of May, the Trump administration got us out of that horrible deal. And then some more stories broke into September. More stories broke of secret meetings happening, and people were saying that what Kerry was doing was actually undermining shadow diplomacy or counter diplomacy, going around the Trump administration's foreign policy. And you mentioned rules for thee. I mean, so much for one president at a time, right?
Right.
And then just days later in this meeting, I want to call it a new meeting. It wasn't new. It happened right then, but we're just now learning about it. The world, the country is just now discovering that there was another meeting that hadn't even been reported yet that happened at the Iranian foreign minister's house, his residence in New York City in October of 2018. And that unnamed group of former U.S. officials were at the meeting having a, quote, off the record, discussion with Zarif. This is outrageous.
No, Ben, you're absolutely right. It's outrageous. I mean, there's something called the Logan Act that we have in America, which specifically bars this type of action. Okay, specifically squared against former officials trying to drive current policy from a different administration. Now, if we have these shadow governments, I mean, is there any? I realize that the Logan Act has literally never been prosecuted before. Joe Biden was actually the one who threw it out to prosecute Mike Flynn for it. Do you see any charges coming down for this in any capacity whatsoever?
I don't. I think, as much as I don't like what happened and what happened was wrong, they seem to have found some gray space in American jurisprudence about what, even if something was sort of traditionally out of bounds and people just didn't do it for years and years. And then all of a sudden, we have these stories happening. Not what Mike Flynn did, not calling his counterparts, for that welcoming conversation of a new incoming administration, just days away, from going into office.
This is the middle of an administration.
In the middle of administration with a particular policy agenda. Iran, yes, President Trump is, getting us out of this deal, but don't worry, we'll be back in power at some point. We'll be back in power soon. We know what they were working on at the time.
Yeah. So Ben, real quick, I got less than a minute left. Do you think, or can you point to anything definitively that could be used in any legal capacity to say this changed the course of policy under Trump, even though they weren't, the people who met with the JCPOA folks weren't even in power?
That's a great question. I think the real consequence here, if there's going to be one, I mean, because let's just be honest, the current administration is not going to prosecute.
Right.
That.
Of course not.
But the American people, and that's one of the reasons the ACLJ does this FOIA, this Freedom of Information Act practice, is to let the American people know what their government was doing. And then that in the American system is the ultimate accountability. But it depends on the American people to take and to care and engage it.
Yeah, no, well, I hope that somebody is held accountable for something, because you can't have two forms of, and I'd be upset if it was Trump administration officials doing the same thing. So, Ben Sisney, we appreciate you joining us.
Hey, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Happy Memorial Day.
You too as well, sir.